I think the topic given to us is a pretty complex one. The way I look at it, okay, because the AI, specifically the AI ML, so we amalgamate both of them together, but I always give it a larger picture to that. That's an AI. It's coming in very, very fast, and it is automating across, and massive investment is happening across the board at this time. US is pumping in more than $3 trillion into AI. China is pumping in 2.5, $147 billion into AI. Okay, and I think India is also picking up very fast into that. Where we work on specifically is that we are establishing AI innovation hubs across India on different domains. That is how we are implementing the AI part of it, and see that this evolution gains a lot of ground, specifically because the way we feel it, and that's the narrative we carry, that AI, as it matures, this technology matures, India may be at rest as a nation. So that is very critical for us to be part of Industrial Revolution 4.0. Now, coming back to the topic which we have, that how do we build efficiency, more of it. I think there are few things which we need to understand here. One is that even for supply chain or any other domain, okay, the data fabric is very, very important. It needs to be extendable by depth, by horizontally or vertically. It needs to be multi-attributable, okay, that is very, very critical as well for the data fabric to be, and it needs to be responsive also. So this data fabric is very critical, and I think a lot of companies, I have been hearing other sessions which was happening, and a lot of other companies are investing a huge amount of money into creating their data fabric. Now, once it happens, the intelligence or the layer of AI ML will walk it. And third, they will build up the policies, the business rules, which will bring in the execution part of it, or which they call it automation, right? So that is how I think the lot of benefits will start accruing. But let me come back to all of you top guys from your own field, specifically from AI is here, and Saurabh comes from the business user perspective from that. Let me start from Saurabh itself, understand how he is leveraging it on the AI ML algorithms and building the efficiencies around it.
Thank you, Mr. Lal. And very interestingly put that if AI and ML continues to happen, the country can be at risk as well, because the human intelligence has to continuously kind of grow. I'll quickly take everyone just back a couple of years, probably about 20 years back. If you had to assemble a car, you'll take about 3 days for one car. If you had to print a bill, it had to be like a huge effort. And if you talk about today, in minutes, the cars come out. In seconds, millions of bills can be printed as well. And all of this is possible because we've been learning through machine learning and a lot of AI, which is kind of coming up. I think all of this that's happening is huge change. And when we talk about the topic that we have is about human intelligence and how do we make sure that the performance in the supply chain continues to go higher and higher through the use of AI ML. Our certain belief at Upgrad, and that's where I am. Upgrad is a higher education skilling company. And in the edtech space where we are, we certainly believe that continuous upskilling, and specifically in the areas which is continuously changing, be it AI, ML, and many more facets, the continuous learning is going to be very, very critical. To get the best performance and how the human interface in the business continues to excel and bring more and more result is going to be a continuous investment in one's own skilling. And in 2015, when we started Upgrad, at that point of time, one of the things that we looked at was, like we look at investment that happens on a lot of other things, whether it's an asset or anything that we procure every year, we keep budgets for that. We certainly believed that everyone has to invest in their skilling and upskilling every year. With AI ML continuously coming up the curve and changing the lives, we certainly believe that the array of courses that we provided, which initially was quite questioned, that would you really kind of invest that much of money in a smaller course of a duration of 3 months or a 6 months of a year. Today, when we talk about it, we are already Asia's largest edtech company. We've already impacted about 10 million plus learners. And specifically in the area of AI ML, this is almost a number of 3 million plus. Certain belief that we have is there's no stop to it for sure, but the only way to make sure we don't become redundant is a continuous upskilling. And that's where I blend it with the employee base as well. For any organization, be it in any industry, and I've been quite fortunate to work in very varied industries so far. I was a part of a company called Rio Tinto, which was a mining company. And what we used to do there long back was run driverless trucks and driverless trains, hundreds of kilometers in Australia, Canada, and spaces. I used to be a part of Airtel, where we looked at how the journey of the CAF forms transformed from a manual to a complete digital, and a lot of technology disrupting it. When I look at Upgrad, okay, I was also a part of Ecom Express, so which was a logistics company just before I joined Upgrad a few months back. The use of AI ML to boost the power and speed and accuracy of a delivery boy reaching your place through the use of the artificial intelligence and machine learning in terms of the routing or the accuracy in terms of when is the customer going to be available at a home used to create such a big delta in the whole scheme of things. And we can talk more about it during the session. And at Upgrad, for me, I've got two big levers here. One is a employee who has to reach out to a learner and make sure that the right learner is connected with the right course. For me, that's supply chain. To make sure that I have the right availability of the right courses available for the learner, which is continuously changing month on month, not year on year now. Almost that's the kind of change that's coming. And then about the learners, how do we make sure that the learners continuously become better and better? And if they continue to upskill, how would their performance using AI and ML in their own organizations is going to be so different? So a couple of those things, and I would talk about more businesses that we have as a product, but certainly believe that the topic organizations are becoming more and more serious as we continue to progress. Every 6 months or 1 year, when we look back, something that we were using probably is not there now anymore. So
Yeah. So Avinash, you are also from the you can probably guide us.
Sure. And good afternoon, everyone. So, see, the way, obviously, every industry has seen the emergence of certain technologies, and that technology is helping the industry to grow in a certain way. AI/ML is another, one such another technology, but I think the amount of impact that it's going to have is going to be significant. And like my friend was saying, in different industries, it has found its different use cases, and each of these use cases clearly changes the way people operate. Right. One such example, and I'll take a step back, look at certain far more impactful changes that have happened, and then try and give some context to our industry, which is where I come from, which is CPG industry. So for example, before Google Maps, right, there was hardly any reference to where you're getting from point A to point to B. How do you get that? Now, while Google Maps have come in, what AI/ML has done really is the real-time change in terms of what's the shortest route, how do you reach from point A to point B, and it's just made a massive difference. Today you can't operate without that, right? So there's a lot of information data that it has used, and then obviously there's a way to churn the data, algorithms to churn the data and drive an output. Similarly, if I look at our industry, a CPG industry, a consumer products goods industry, traditionally, how were products sold? So there were products were sold, standard general trade, modern trade, retail stores. Now, while there was a lot of data that was available, there was hardly any way of capturing that data, right? And which is where even if there were technologies like these, it would have found it very difficult to find relevant use cases, because obviously it evolves over a period of time. Now, with e-commerce coming in, what has dramatically changed is the way this data is available and captured, right? So, for example, if a consumer is buying, from which location is it buying, the location where it's buying, what are the kind of products that the consumer is also searching for, and then what he's buying. So that the amount of data that's available is massive. And because that ecosystem has evolved, that data capturing has evolved in a certain way, right? So today, for example, even at a minute or an hourly basis, we can capture which consumer, what are the products that are being looked at by the consumer from which geographies of the country. Are those consumers buying those products, not buying those products? What are they doing? What are the relevant other products that they're searching for? What are they buying, etc. So that information that's now available is significant, and that I think has also evolved with the change in the ecosystem of the entire commerce space. Now, what AI/ML does is obviously use that information in a certain form and then derive certain actionable outputs for us. One such example is we are able to sense demand better, right? Earlier, we would have been able to do it only with a certain amount of lag. Only 1 month later, when the information is available that what has sold from a retail is, we would know what has moved, which products are moving, in which geographies are they moving, how do we react to those products. Today, that information is available at an hourly basis. And that gives us an ability then to ingest that information and then take certain action. So I think what AI/ML, and this was just one such example, and would love to obviously share certain in terms of other contexts, in terms of how different organizations in this space are evolving. But I think what AI/ML is doing is, before that, the big change is the ability to ingest a lot of this data, which has also evolved over a period of time with the right ecosystems coming in, right? With how internet has evolved is how this data is now getting captured today. For example, with the Amazons and the Flipkarts of the world, a lot of this information is now available in terms of what are the consumers searching, where are they searching from, etc. So that data availability, which is the core of how, so AI/ML can only work on massive amounts of data, and I think their leverage is when a lot of this data is available, which cannot be easily correlated by any other technology, but an AI/ML can use a lot more advanced algorithms to find patterns on that data and then drive certain actionables outside outputs of those. So that's where I think the shift has happened. So data, clearly, ability to capture the data has been one of the tipping points of AI/ML to then leverage this information and grow.
That's wonderful. So generally, I consider the Indian companies are basically type C companies. We jump the bandwagon when everybody else has jumped it, right? But it is heartening to see that a lot of AI/ML algorithms are being utilized, right from supply chain to Upgrad. So let's hear from Ashutosh also, because he works from the implementation part of the game, right? So he then comes from the company which is actually rolling out AI/ML algorithms for different domains. What about supply chain? How you are building efficiencies there, Ashutosh?
We'll start from story because I only have experience of 4 years. So I'll start with the story. The story being, what happened in the industrial revolution? Before industrial revolution, a major part of Asia, I mean, we were factually dominating the GDP. But then industrial revolution happened and we somehow lagged in that. And since we lagged that, we were ruled by people who dominated in that sector. Now again, okay, there can be counter questions, but let's forget that. Again, as sir has started, that we are at risk. Yes, we are. However, there is a possibility that it can be turned around. That when everyone is pumping in cash, we have talented people to pump in. And we have the opportunity in form of growing economy. And we already are probably the largest exporter of softwares. So all of these things put together help us with the platform wherein we can really dominate the market of developing and deploying AI-enabled technology. And that's what we do at Caliche. So primarily, among the August panelists here, I will be focusing on two important things. First, performance of the technology, and second, performance of the people who build those technologies. And I believe that that's where we are also overlapping with the agenda of this particular panel. And it takes me again back to the comment that, sir, you have just made, that we are somewhere, most of the companies are somewhere in the type C, wherein we are looking for already happened and proven use cases, and then we are adopting it. And in addition to that, we'll start again at the point where last discussion ended. That is, people were talking about how do we design a solution and how do we go about it. And those of us who have been paying attention, there was serious discussion about what is the ROI. All of these things bring us down to a possibility that these are the problems we face when we are presented with one solution only. How about we are presented with a pool of solutions and then we have to pick the most efficient ones. And this is where performance of people who build them comes into picture. That is, now at Caliche, we are fundamentally an inventions company. So when we reach out to a particular organization for helping them with the solution, we present to them a repertoire of around 150 or so use cases and the solution that we have, because we believe in developing the IPs. And how do we impact supply chain? For that, I will end up with one serious question and a possible answer for that. That while all of us here are talking about or might be considering, let's say, what will be the demand, one of the solutions, or rather another question that I would like to put up in front of everyone is, what about the uncertainty? How do we quantify it? And what is can we even quantify it? That's the question. And I will be happy to discuss it among the course of the discussion. Over to you, sir.
So that was a very convoluted one, by the way. Okay, but that is how the AI guys are. Okay, so they are there. So let me come to from Mirasys' perspective. How do you look at Arindam? What's your input?
So I think the company which are best run are data driven. If we are not using the data, which any company would have, then we are fools in this world, right? Now coming back, there are two kind of data, right? Everybody has a data. Now there is a data junk. Now the input of data is a junk. Now are we able to make some sense out of the data? That is most important. With the current, like you said, that we are, the type C country. So what happens? The competition is fierce, right? And for any organization or enterprise to survive, whether it be a SCM, whether it be a software company like us, the important factors are, how do we enhance profitability? How do we lower our cost? And third, how do we ensure that the customer has the highest level of satisfaction? I think this is where AI ML comes into play, because we have a lot of data and we have never even thought about those data. Now you have a lot of engines which are being developed. On that engines, you put your data and you did predictions, right? So you get a prediction, okay, this is today, let's say I'm a manufacturer. I need A, B, C, D items from different suppliers. And I find out that every year during Diwali, let's say I'm a car manufacturer, my car sales goes up. Now, how did we plan to, let's say 20 years back or 10 years back, the data was whatever the sales team used to project and what is the capacity of my plant. That's how we used to work on the number of cars to be manufactured, right? But right now, we have a lot of insights and data that are we getting the supplies, or let's say I can also predict right now, a lot of companies are already doing that in January, what will be my probable sales for this models, and for which I need to be prepared from today. My supply chain, my logistic, my distribution, everything should be in line. So that's where I think typically it comes around now. So Mirasys, we have been a data-driven company. I have been running Mirasys for last 7-8 years. We have been predominantly working for the smart cities. We have come up with very specific use cases related to these cities, like a pothole detections, specific to the Indian cities, no helmet, triple riding. This kind of problems we have already solved. And we have created some specific solutions with Intel. So Intel has been our partner. With Intel, we have created a lot of solutions on women safety. So if a woman is in distress, we have created those solutions. Now we realize that it's high time, the SCM, there are a lot of variabilities in the SCM. They need people like us, or because we have an experience of so many years, that they need to find out data or sense out of the data what they have. We have been working with multiple companies, including I'll give an, including a lot of e-commerce, there have been pilferages in tunes of $1 million. Pilferages are when they are supplying their material. Let's say I ordered something on, let's say Amazon, Flipkart, the material comes to my house, and then there is a refund request, right? Now, the refund request is whatever material I have got, the, or let's say I ordered a mobile phone, there was no mobile phone. Now, how do you understand where the mobile phone was not put actually, or the mobile phone was damaged, or I as a consumer had a different intention? So this is where we come in. We give you insights that where exactly the pilferage would have happened, and that is helping a lot of clients. So yeah, so I think this is what we have been doing, and over to you, sir.
So I see a lot of work is already happening. But one thing, Saurabh, let me come back to you. That's good to hear everybody out. Uh, Specifically in Upgrad, what kind of algorithms? I mean, let us not talk about algorithm, but what kind of use cases you have been implementing or already got it implemented, which is boosting your efficiencies further.
Sure. So I'll again bifurcate it into one, people that I have, and two, learners, which is the customer base. So when I talk about people, it's about, this is a new industry. This is just about 7 years old in the avatar that it is. So I don't have trained workforce outside in the world, but it's a lot about making sure that when we hire the right person for the aptitude, and we skill them, and then we boost their productivity. So right from recruitment, where we're using a lot of AI in terms of AI and ML in terms of assessment centers and proctored tests, how do we make sure that the algorithms actually throw a lot of information in terms of, am I hiring the right person? Is this person going to be able to handle the kind of learner experience that we talk about? To a stage where we're talking about what kind of training skills that training needs that the person has. And it's a lot of data that we're pulling into our PMS system, performance management system, where we're saying, how can we actually get inputs in terms of their previous experience, the way they performed in a particular week with a particular set of data, and will that same algorithm work in a particular time zone again? And from there, creating a lot of training needs and upskilling them and giving them nudges in terms of uh, how do you make sure that the app and the data points actually creates scenarios where people get to know that, all right, you know what, this is the way that you can increase your productivity. And that's, for me, increasing performance with the use of AI ML in the system. It is also, from a learner perspective, I look at it in two ways. One, I've got learners spread across various product lines that we have. So we have a college learner set where we've got companies like Atlas, which is a university in Mumbai. It's the first urban university. We've got Golden Gate University in San Francisco, which is a long-term pact with us. And then we are also having courses through our degrees program spread across 200 plus universities across, and not just India, but globally. And then we've got working professional courses where the learners are people like us who are working already and have to continuously improve their skills or upskill or reskill across data, across degrees, across law. Whether you talk about a DBA, which is a doctorate of business administration, where we're telling people to go deep rooted into the subject and really become experts. And I certainly believe for the AI ML, we need a lot more people in India and globally as well who would upskill themselves to that level. Now, if this is the set of learners that I have, and how do I make sure, one, I'm capturing their interests very well? And it comes from various sources of data that we have. Now, from those sources of data, it is not about just selling a course to them, because at Upgrad, what we certainly believe in is it's matching the right subject and the topic which the learner needs and making them successful. And there is an outcome, certain outcome, which either gets them a job or gets them an increase in terms of the responsibility or the performance or the stature in an organization. If that outcome-based approach has to happen, I need to make sure the right set of data moves to my right set of counselor who's going to connect with the learner and offer them the right courses. And we also keep capturing this data to know that in future, And if it's a lifelong learning, that's the agenda that we've created. In that lifelong learning agenda, I have learners' data that I use to say that, okay, all right, if you've done your college, and in a few years, I know that in your journey, you will need a course from either a Harappa, which is about Thrive skills, or it's from Insofi, which is about AI ML, or it's from Knowledge Hut, which is about a lot of tech courses and AI ML and boot camps that we run. Or is it about a higher education that you need and I bring in my study abroad and say, all right, would you want to go around the world and pick up the right university for yourself? Or I bring in another company, which is Centum, where I say, all right, if I need to run your sales academy, and I would use a lot of AI ML to actually create nudges and set you right for success. All of this data for learners is also driven through the AI ML practices that we have. So for both the sets, what we believe in is if you use the right technology, if you use the right way of AI ML application into EdTech, the whole supply chain gets unlocked for us, both from a supply of courses, supply creation through the counselors, plus also the learners who would get the right solution at the right time. And I believe that's going to make sure that we are not redundant, but we are actually ahead of the race. And in the vision of the $5 trillion economy that we're set to create, India is actually going to be a front runner while we create the magic across the
Vishwaguru,
world.
right? Vishwaguru in Industry Revolution 4.0 is big. So that is how you look at it. So Avinash, I mean, from the Upgrad perspective, they seem to be quite ahead into it, and they're leveraging AI ML a lot. Any particular use case you can point it out from your perspective, your industry perspective,
Sure.
if you have already done it with AI ML?
Yeah, sure. So in fact, and before that, when you were mentioning India, where does India lie in terms of the entire AI ML piece, right? The world's obviously far ahead of where India is, and India is doing a lot of implementations, catch up, etc. Right? We also look at AI ML, with those lens where obviously there are so many use cases that have been tried and tested across the world. Right? How we look at our journey of adoption of a certain technology is it's a three-step process. The first step is there is a certain technology that has reached a certain stage, and there's a vision that's created around it, right? So AI/ML is one such technology, and there are so many use cases. If I take a very specific example, let's say what Amazon has done in US with AI/ML technology is massive, right? So that creates that helps us to create a certain vision of what can be done with this technology. For example, they are able to predict what the consumer is going to buy to a certain extent, and they ship these goods in anticipation of when the consumer is going to buy, and the goods are already in that vicinity of that area which are moving. So it's not in a warehouse sitting for an order to come in. And as in when an order is created by a consumer, it's if the goods are in the vicinity, they're immediately delivered, right? So the time from when a consumer is ordering to the time when it is delivered, it's getting shortened, and they're trying to extend it to a point where they'll predict they'll before a consumer orders, or the time becomes so short that the consumer orders and the products are available to them, right? So that's what the technology can do, right? So that creates a vision. So that's the first part of that. Now, using that as an information, that gives us, when we are scouting for what kind of technologies that are available, it gives us a certain filter to say what a technology can do and and these are already proven ways of utilizing that technology. The next step to that is, and which is where I come to the first step, is to identify certain use cases which might be able to use that technology to a certain extent. But obviously, there's a journey that it goes through, and which is where in the India context, it's, there are technologies that are available. You can plug and play, try and test them out, and around your own use cases. So that's the first step. So how do we filter that out, the technology? How do we create a small use case, test it out? And then the next step is to, implement that technology, pilot it, scale it up. And so that's a three-step journey. It starts with 3, comes to 1, and then 2, right? And that's the kind of a recurring process that we try and adopt as a frame to evaluate multiple technologies. Now, in that context, how we look at AI and ML specifically, from our business lens, there are 2 ways where we clearly see certain use cases, and we have tried and tested, and we are implementing some of those use cases. One is in terms of aiding a consumer buying, from a consumer lens. How can we use this information or the technology to aid a consumer buying experience or the consumer buying in itself? For example, when a consumer is buying or wanting to buy a certain product, can we suggest them what are the other products, that's going to make sense to them? And that can only be done by ingesting a lot of data and figuring out what are the correlations, etc. Right? The other way is in our kind of a beauty category, when a consumer is buying online but is not able to physically see the product. For example, a lipstick, right? Can an AI/ML technology enable a consumer to see how would that product look on him or her, right? And can that ease his buying decision, right? So that's one. Those are some certain use cases which are from a consumer lens. How do we use the technology to aid a certain buying behavior? The second area where there are certain use cases is how do we execute a certain buying action of a consumer in a more seamless form, and which is where the whole supply chain comes in play. And when we execute this, how can AI and ML help us to make this easier for our workforce to execute? So how can we do it in a much more productive and efficient way? So that's the second area where AI ML finds a lot of use cases. One such simple example is, I was talking about the whole demand sensing, etc. Right? So saying if there is a certain change in a demand pattern, how do we make sure that we have the right products available to the closest warehouse, that when a consumer is buying, he gets the product the next day, right? Similarly, if that happens in the warehouse itself, because warehouses are run by manpower, right? How can we use the technology to aid the manpower to be more productive and efficient? So there are technologies right now, for example, which are pick to lights. So a person does not have to go and search for the product. The person moves in the warehouse, and there are technologies that tells him, there's a pick to light technology which tells him this is what you have to pick. So his productivity goes up. He doesn't have to spend a lot of time, which he would have otherwise done to identify a product, right? How can the logistics be automated in a certain way where it is optimum enough to say which courier partner would get that load, which would minimize the lead time and the cost as well, right? So multiple legs of these different use cases, but broadly, if you have to divide it, it would be in terms of one from a consumer lens, the other one more from a supply efficiency.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And let me add to this that every user company is building a lot of efficiencies into it. Like Amazon has got the current model, which they call it shop and ship. You go and buy, and then they will ship it to your home. But they're leveraging AI ML to change this model from shop and ship to ship and shop. So they will predict that what you are going to buy and send it to your home. When you will pick it up, they will bill you. Otherwise, it will return back to them, right? And that is the whole model is changing due to AI ML. So much of predictive analytics they are bringing into it. So, Ashutosh, we don't have much time. Okay, a short answer. Okay, specifically that on the supply chain, what kind of use cases you have been involved into it from Caliche perspective? Any particular one?
Let's pick a very special use case. That's what if they are small farmers? They intend to understand the uncertainty in the produces that they are bringing to the market. How do we go about solving it? So fundamentally, if we want to do it, neither they do have the money nor the resources to do it. So we come into picture wherein we have built our IPs on the data sets that we think are suitable for that. Now we are talking about data sets from world's largest wholesalers who already have an understanding that how these vegetables, of course, there are not much devices involved, but then there are mathematical weights and there are processes that they have first done on their own. Now we have created our IP. So we know the know-how that how these use cases can be implemented. So when someone like small group of farmers or a medium scale company reach out to us, then we already have the know-how. So that brings the advantage for them and as well as for us. And that's how we help them in facilitating and making more money, basically.
Any example from Mirasys perspective, Arindam?
Yeah. There were certain cases where you had, let's say, you have the cold storages. You have a lot of silos over there. So they have, let's say, the government has a lot of schemes where your rice and other stuffs are given there, right? It's a 1 ton of rice which is getting inside and which is there in the cold storage for a month, for 6 months, for a year. And when it comes out, the shipped is only half a ton. So this is the kind of pilferages we have been working on, and it has been very successful. I think we were able to add a lot of value to our clients, and we are developing more use cases depending on the data sets availability with the client. Yeah.
Thank you. I think our time is up. Thank you. That's wonderful. I think the AI ML will be a lot of impact bringing it to supply chain in coming years. Thank you.